Hi, everyone. On this week's Tuesday Night Podcast, we were fortunate enough to have return contributor, appraiser Blaine Fyan. What makes Blaine such a great guest is that he works for an appraisal company that has appraisers all over the country. So he really has a good feel of what's going on all over our country.
Blaine is so smart too. I mean, typically real estate agents, they're not very fond of appraisers sometimes. Well, I'll say that they're fond of them when they say that the value is what the purchase price is or higher, because then they can move forward with their transaction. But we all know that when things don't appraise, that becomes the problem, because a lot of people, they don't want to buy an overpriced house, especially now, but they can't get money for an overpriced house. So the appraisal has to be at least what the contract says that they're paying for the home. But yeah, he did say, Melissa, that Boise, Idaho, Austin, Miami, Santa Fe, San Francisco, we're seeing some major price declines. And we know that home prices have really dropped throughout the country, with exceptions to, a few markets. And, what that means is just not the list price coming down, but people not overpaying like they were prior to a year ago, when we were seeing the average list price high and then the average offer 10% over that high list price. And we were seeing appraisal gap contingencies. Ridiculous appraisal gap contingencies, people paying $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 over appraised value for their home because they wanted it. And they were coming up with the extra cash for this from, mom and dad, if they were first-time home buyers, or from equity that they were getting out of their home sale. They didn't have a problem. A lot of these buyers with just overspending. But it was great to have him on the show, Melissa, because he is so smart when it comes to, his craft, his job. And he's been in the industry over 20 years. And you're right, with him, being part of a nationwide network, he was really able to lay down some good foundation. And I think our audience really enjoyed, his expertise.
Our Tuesday night shows are live, and this one almost was 2 hours in length. And lots of you had comments and questions, and we weren't able to get to all of them, but we're going to address some right now. A lot of you give personal insight on how you feel and really what you're experiencing. We had a viewer, our home has dropped $40,000 in last 10 months. That's 10%, but it's going down every month. Plan on seeing the requirement of 20% down just so the banks can protect themselves.
Melissa, we're seeing 10% price drops here in Maryland on certain properties. And I think that when we look at a lot of comments and questions from our viewers, why are we still seeing homes selling for over list price? We have to keep in mind that, the ones that are overpriced right now are sitting on the market, and they're the ones we're seeing the price declines. But if a home is priced correctly and the buyer's still seeing value in the home, there is still a competitiveness to the bidding process or the buying process. And we're seeing where, people do pay, in many cases, still more than list price. However, we have to be mindful that what we're looking at when you're commenting and you're saying the house down the street sold for $10,000 over list price, that means that contract was placed 30 days ago. So you have to keep in mind the average settlement time is about 30 to 45 days across the United States. There are exceptions to the rule, cash deals, things like that, or you may see something in 10 days or 2 days, but that's not the norm. But we are seeing prices come down across the country, and we have evidence of that with the median home price that's been published is dropping for the first time in a long time, so more than a decade. But what I really like to say to this comment is, will banks start requiring 20% down? I don't really see that. I don't think we've seen that for, since pre-World War II, really. You can put 20% down. I think that's the magic number for eliminating mortgage insurance, but I don't think the banks are going to require that. I think that we'll still see, the 3.5% down FHA, the 0% down option for VA. I guess anything could happen. If we see banks collapse and we see massive foreclosures, certainly those down payment requirements may change. 20% is a big number. If you think about that, if you buy a $400,000 house, it's probably close to $100,000 out of pocket cash to close by the time you pay the 20% down, the lender fees, transfer recordation fees, things like that. So I don't think, many people have that kind of cash to buy a house.
Blaine reviewed many components that factor into coming up with that appraisal value. We did have a viewer make a comment. Pendings and listings are a direction of value. What are your thoughts on that, Todd?
Melissa, it may be a market trend when we see pendings because we can see how many days on the market before it went under contract. But new listings, they're not really metrics to use to put a value on a home. What people want, what a seller lists the home for, what their ideal price would be to, get a buyer to pay has nothing to do with whether the home is worth it or not. So, it may be a trend that, appraisers could look at, or that a real estate agent could look at as far as, developing an offer price and things like that. But from an appraised value, they're only using closed sales, as far as coming up with their appraised value. But Melissa, I would encourage a buyer that's making an offer on a home to look at the pendings, see, what the price of the house was and how quickly it went under market. And if it truly is a comparable sale, the buyer would buy that house, if it were not under a pending status. You may be able to gauge, what the trends are as far as, if it's been on the market for 2 days and it's pending, chances are it wasn't a price drop, it was a price increase, something that was too good for the seller to turn down. But if you can look at those pending sales as a valuable comp to what it is you'd like to put an offer on, and you can see that maybe it was on the market for 60 or 90 days, then it may be some kind of an indication that they didn't get, what they wanted, or, there were some other concessions in there.
The question comes up many times during a real estate transaction on who exactly hires the appraiser. We did have a viewer who asked, should you trust your realtor with choosing your appraiser or inspector, or should you shop for one on your own?
This is a great question. First of all, the agent does not pick the appraiser. They would probably love to do so, but there is a process that is really, as Blaine had indicated, that protects the lender. Though the buyer pays for the appraisal, the appraiser actually works for the lender. So that's their job, to protect the lender's asset, lending money, and they're collateralizing the property with a loan. And, so they want to make sure that it is worth what the contract amount is and what is being financed. But as far as the home inspector, I wouldn't necessarily trust the agent for a home inspector. I think it's important that the buyer do their own due diligence and, call the inspector, ask questions, or at least inquire, how long they've been in business, what are their reviews, what are their inspectors, what kind of experience do they have? Did they just take the course? Or do they actually have contracting experience? And the inspectors that have contracting experience, they'll probably know more than somebody that just took a course. And, you have to understand there's a lot of fine print in the contract of the home inspection company where really it relieves them of a lot of the obligations. They basically will do an overview, see if things are working or not at the time of the inspection. Maybe they'll say that things are at end of life, like a heating and air system or a water heater or something like that. But a lot of times they say have it evaluated by a heating and air specialist or company, licensed company. Or they may say have an electrician, a licensed electrician, evaluate the electrical, situation. So they're not necessarily going to tell you what's wrong or what it needs. They're really going to kick the can down the road, but good inspectors will pick up on a lot of the things that are wrong with the house. Bad inspectors, they can certainly glaze over problems. So, just to kind of recap that, agents have nothing to do with home appraisers hiring them. They have little influence on changing an appraiser's mind or, educating the appraiser. Blaine even said that the appraisers can kind of get annoyed with listing agents that try and, kind of sway them on value or try and justify the value. They're going to put their own price on it. Not only that, but, most of the lenders, they have an in-house appraisal process or in-house appraiser. They're second guessing even the field appraiser that goes out and physically sees and values the property. And as far as the home inspection company, do your own due diligence, ask questions, make sure you're there. an important thing. Make sure you and your agent go to the home inspection, because we see a lot of times the agents feel like it's a waste of time. They say things like, I'm not a home inspector. I don't know what to look for. I mean, look, an agent should be able to ask questions along the side of you, like, hey, what's this? Or, oh, we're taking a deeper dive into the home over several of hours, where, maybe the agent only spent 15 minutes in the house with you prior to getting to the inspection. So this is really an opportunity, for your agent to, ask some questions too.
Many of you had comments and questions about foreclosures, and really multiple questions were asking Todd what you and Blaine were seeing. We had a viewer make a statement. I would think a rise in the unemployment rate would foreshadow foreclosure rates, and that hasn't happened. Car repossession rates are steady as well. Housing would be the last thing people give up.
Washington doesn't want to see foreclosures, even though there has been hints and some reports that are saying that, foreclosures are on the rise, or serious delinquencies, where someone's 90 days or more delinquent on paying their mortgage. But it's still a pretty low number historically. And I think that has been because of all the stimulus, the workouts, and now with FHA coming out with the 40-year loan modification, where they'll cast the balance of, borrowers that are in default of FHA insured loans to a 40-year term. The question is, what are those guidelines going to look like? Will they do re-inspections or reappraisals of the property like they did when it was first purchased, to make sure the house is still safe for the borrower to live in? So a lot of these guidelines, we're waiting to see what that will look like. Also, will there be a cap on interest rates? Because if somebody bought it 4 years, 5 years ago, and they've been in default, chances are they have a 4% average mortgage rate. Will they, these loans be cast to the 6.5%, or will there be some type of cap on that? But as far as, what we are seeing, I'm not seeing the foreclosures as much as now I'm starting to see short sales or a potential short sale. And what that means is that the price of the house where it's listed on the market may not satisfy the mortgage loan balance. So that means that the lender has to allow for a shortage, accept less than what they're owed, in order for the seller to, sell the home. Now, this short sale process can take months. I don't know. Maybe it could even take a year or more in order, from somebody that wants it, that can, efficiently or effectively buy the house. But that means to me that a lot of borrowers are in trouble. They're struggling making their mortgage payments. So when we start seeing potential short sales, things like that, there are red flags that, some homeowners are struggling, Melissa.
And Todd, that leads us right into affordability. Again, people are feeling the stress and the pressure from that. We had a viewer make a comment. The ever-rising price of energy will lead to some folks no longer being able to afford living in their homes.
So, Melissa, affordability is kind of hitting everybody, everywhere. So, the big things right now is, we know over the last several years, people have really overspent on, their cars, their automobile expenses. If they bought a new car, they paid over list price. They're financing them for 7 years. There was a report on ABC News 11, a company called Fitch Ratings. I actually have it pulled up here, said that, in May of 21, the amount of borrowers that were at least 60 days behind on their car payment hit a 7-year low of about 2.58% of people that were paying on their cars. And with a recent, survey from December of 22, that doubled to 5.67%. And, the article goes on to say that what used to be an average of a $400 to $500 a month car payment has now, gone to a $700 or $800 a month car payment. And like I said, what was normally a 5-year loan is now, it's not uncommon to see somebody in a 7-year loan for their car. And then, yes, with rising gas prices, energy costs, heating your home, cooling your home. Now, as we're coming into summer months, food prices, now we're seeing layoffs. Affordability is a major concern for many, and should be, in the United States.
So many are forecasting with current news where actually this is going to put us in the future. We had a viewer make a comment. If oil production cuts raises oil prices, more inflation, higher rates longer, eventually recession.
I think there's no question if they're cutting oil, production by, I think it was 3.2 million barrels a day, right? How will that affect us on a global economy, right? Not just here in the United States. So, of course, imported products, domestic products, most of these products get to us, Melissa, through fossil fuel powered, transportation. So I think that if we see, just take a look at oil stocks, right? I mean, things have been skyrocketing. So prices of oil are going up. It will affect us not only at the pump, but it will affect our goods and our services ultimately, because even our service providers are driving around in fossil fuel vehicles. So, I don't know, where we go from here. We certainly can't really afford to have a reverse in any type of decrease in inflation. So, some say we're in a recession. They've redefined a recession. I think really what we're looking at is more of a depression, not a recession. So, I'm from the belief of, read into what you're hearing as much as you want, but be smart about your spending. Right? Be aware of what's going on. It's certainly, we're not hearing great things in mainstream media. So, with that being said, the hysteria value alone, Melissa, is driving people, smart money to kind of back off, recede back. I think we need to pay attention to that.
And in closing, at the end of the podcast, Blaine said the same thing, to just save your money at this point. And there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love answering your comments and questions. Keep them coming.
And guys, if you like the video or feel that you're getting value from our videos, you can let Melissa and I know that you are by hitting that thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Smash that alert bell. You'll know every time we upload content just like this. See you next time.
See you next time.
Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.